I have a confession to make, my friend. There are some stories that I just find it really satisfying when a character who has just been prideful throughout the whole story gets humbled even just a little bit. Just someone calls them out on it, or someone just reminds them of their actual place in the universe. It just brings a bit of satisfaction, in a sense. And I might not be the only one who thinks that way. Because in a way, it's one of those characters, well, it's one of those examples of a character doing what is coming to them, where they've been planting seeds all for the story, and now it's finally time to reap that harvest. And again, it's almost natural to want to see that in our lives for various reasons. But going back to why that might be, in case in particular, is like Proverbs 16:18. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Now, most of us probably would assume that it was actually pride doth before a fall, but that is where it kind of becomes almost like the cultural touchstone, where almost everybody can say it without actually referring back to Proverbs 16:18. So it's pretty much expected that when someone is really prideful, there's eventually going to be a bad consequence for it. So it's something we realize. But it's not just that why we might not like Edo in a sense, because pride can just rub people the wrong way, especially when they are around it almost constantly. Because it's no fun being around someone who's just very self-focused, that everything is about them, and they're just puffed up on whatever it is they get puffed up about, whatever they've done good, whatever they've done bad. It's just always about them. And sometimes they may think they're the best person for the job, but actually they're actually least informed about the job, or whatever, they're least informed about the situation. And then this happens when the prideful character is not one of the main characters. So they're off in their own little world thinking like they're the hero of the story, when really they don't even know what's going on. They think they're the center of the universe, but they're just a reoccurring character in the storyline. So it's just one of those things that can be really interesting to explore, because then it's kind of what the character is thinking about. And I'm going to get into why that really matters, because what separates pride from confidence? Because if we are really honest with ourselves, it's a matter of perspective. For example, from the outside looking in, what separates pride from confidence is pretty much a question of, do you like this person or character? Do they make you feel good? Or do you not like this character or person? Do they make you feel bad? Again, that can kind of sum up what traits we would determine as being related to confidence, and what traits we would relate to being ego or even narcissism. And again, watch how people act when certain people have like very similar traits. And again, sometimes we can think of bad traits as almost being like the perversions of good traits in a sense, or like the slightly off kind of tendencies, whatever. So it's important to realize kind of that kind of interplay where it's like, yeah, just going slightly off kilter is enough to make it bad. But it's one of those things to just observe in that, okay, wait a minute, this person is calling out this person as being full of themselves and prideful, yet they actually adore this person who has almost very similar attitude towards life, just is kind of a different way of doing things that they like better. So it's just one of those things to be aware of, and so forth. And in a way that can play to a person or character's natural charisma. We can think of like Tony Stark as like the best example of this, where it's like, yeah, we know he has a bit of an issue with pride or ego, but he's likable, he's funny, whatever. We just like him, so we want to root for him, even if he has that ego. He has a charisma about him. But another way that can be how the story is being written is a character overpowered and knows it, and so pretty much every time they face conflict, they just press the I win button. And that's it. They just know that whatever challenge they face, they are just going to steamroll over it. No questions asked. In a way, that can create a very arrogant character. But yet, a character who still knows they can do great things and does those great things, again, they have to actually be capable of the feats to have the confidence to match it. But yet, sometimes they may fail. They may have underestimated something, they miscalculated, but then they go back to the drawing board and dip back up it and they figure things out, or figure out a new way of doing things, or figure out where the problem was. And so then they actually may be more likable because they still fail. They are still human in the end. They don't just automatically steamroll everything. They have things to learn, things to draw at, those kinds of things to make the character more likable. And then going by perspective, what is a character's or a person's perspective on things? How do they see the world? How do they see themselves? Are they someone who always has to be right and always has to be the best, even when they are not? Again, sometimes it can be interesting to observe where the person who is almost like the least aware of the situation is almost always having to be kind of the person who is always right. It's like they may know the least about the topic, but they are certain they are the best for the job. It's almost interesting to see that in play in certain stories and even in people at times. So it's, again, something to be aware of. Or does this person actually know that there are some things beyond them? And that can actually be a great character arc for someone in a story where they're starting on the same where they are always right, they are always the best, but then they learn that they need their team, they need people around them. They do not always have the answers for certain things. That can be a great character arc for someone to go through, pride to humility. And speaking of humility, is that it's kind of interesting because, well, humility is the opposite of pride. It is not exclusive from confidence. My favorite definition for humility is that it does not mean thinking less of yourself. It just means thinking of yourself less. Again, you can have this confidence about yourself and that you know your traits, your talents, all those things that you can do well. But you're also aware that you might not have all the answers. You're also aware that other people have talents and that may be greater than yours in certain areas, or that they are going through things that you might not be going through or you might not really think about. At times, it's thinking about other people. Because in a way, focusing on personal failures or problems can be a form of pride, even if we sometimes almost consider it a form of humility, because it's still in that mindset of it's all about me. The world just revolves around this person. It's that main character syndrome. Again, it's kind of funny how characters in stories can be those heroes of their own stories, yet they are clearly off about what the story is actually about, who it's actually about. So it's just kind of interesting to think about. But then they have that perspective of everything revolving around them and affects everything. And so it's also important to be aware of when people are like that in real life, because again, we may not want to be around them as much, but it's kind of one of those things to actually observe and to be interesting to observe. But in a way, humility can also mean being open to other perspectives, because while we have this tendency to think we have the purest view of things, it may be an act of humility to go to someone and say, hey, I respect you enough that I want to know why you don't agree with me on this. And maybe there's something I'm missing here. And again, that can be either be a thing where, hey, you might both be missing something in how you've been looking at things, or you just needed that other perspective to get the full view of things. Or it can even be admitting that we are wrong when we are actually wrong. Again, not admitting we are wrong because someone says we are wrong, but admitting we are wrong because, oh yeah, that actually makes sense. I was wrong about that. So it's just something to be aware of because we do have confidence in how we are looking at things. So when we realize that, yes, I wasn't thinking about this directly, or you didn't have the fullest view of things, then it is okay to admit we are wrong. But anyway, these are my thoughts on this. Why not share yours in the comments below? And if you enjoyed this video, you can like and share it so others may enjoy as well. Anyway, I'm Jonah, and you've been watching Lions Made Media, where we celebrate stories and the lessons learned from them. Thank you for listening to my musings. Talk to you later, and have a great rest of your day.